Gary, Indiana has been without power for nearly 2 weeks. And apparently the sleuths there have identified a main culprit. That would be environmental racism. Well, one guy on X claimed that Gary, Indiana had been without power for 11 days. Gary, Indiana is 75% black. And yet another example of environmental racism. Well, what happened? It turned out he got slammed by a glorious community note. It said that utility crews were trying to restore the electricity there, but they were getting shot at. Well, okay, that might slow things down a little bit there. And that happened on August 14th when a NIPSCO vehicle was trying to restore power, but they were shot at. And the mayor of Gary, Indiana, Eddie Melton, said police were actually working with NIPSCO to provide security. Imagine that. Well, he said, quote, "Let me be clear, this type of violence is absolutely unacceptable and will not be tolerated in the city of Gary." Well, that's laughable. And that's because the Democrats have been running Gary, Indiana for decades, and gang violence is very much a way of life. This is a far cry from the Music Man and that hit way back when, Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana. It is no longer a Midwestern paradise. It is more like a gangsta's paradise. And conservative podcaster Kira Davis, who's a friend of mine in the media, and we go way back, she's a super cool person and fantastic with her views on politics. Well, she had some insight into that. She noted on X, people keep shooting at the NIPSCO trucks, and she explained exactly why. She said, in Gary, Indiana, there are roving thieves and home invaders, limited police presence, poorly maintained infrastructure, untrimmed trees making it difficult to reach power lines, damaged streets and sidewalks, and abandoned buildings. And she made it quite clear. She said that her senior citizen uncle still lives there and refuses to leave his home. Not because he doesn't have somewhere to go, but because he's afraid that if he does, he might get shot at, or there might not be anything left in his home when he comes back. Well, imagine that. So you're sitting in a house without electricity after a major storm, and you won't leave because you're more worried about what might happen to your home while you're away. Well, is this environmental racism? Or is this just mismanagement by Democrats who are in charge, who use structural racism as an excuse for their malfeasance, mismanagement, and corruption?
It's been 11 days since powerful storms knocked out electricity to tens of thousands of residents. For many, it's still out, with frustration mounting. CBS's Usher Qureshi is in Gary, Indiana, hit hard by the outage. Usher, good evening to you.
Good evening, Jerika. At this hour, crews are still working while residents are in survival mode. Power is not expected to be restored here for many residents until late Tuesday, and the sense of desperation is growing. Like so many in Gary, Indiana, Shatia Hardin has been waiting for the minute her power finally turns back on.
It's been absolutely horrible. At night, we're sweating, we're irritable. You know, we have children to look out for, elderly people.
The storm walloped Indiana last week, killing at least 7 people and displacing about 1,000. In Gary, the storm knocked out electricity for more than half of the city's residents, where 1 in 3 lives in poverty.
It's not okay for us to continually be in survival mode.
Yesterday, Indiana Governor Mike Braun said he requested an expedited major disaster declaration from FEMA. He says losses from the storm and its aftermath could top $5 billion. Many residents in Gary have been relying on this community center for hot meals, air conditioning, and a chance to charge their phones. Earlier this week, a class action lawsuit was filed against the region's electrical utility, NIPSCO, alleging the company failed to proactively trim back vegetation from power lines. NIPSCO disputes the claim, saying it's more than doubled its vegetation management in the last 10 years. Eddie Melton is the city's mayor.
So we're going to revisit what should we do better from an emergency management standpoint. But going back to the utility side, what I'm going to encourage and demand that we start having more accountability.
Right now, about 30,000 people here in northern Indiana are still without power. For people who are still waiting, if their power doesn't come back until Tuesday, that'll mean they've been in the dark for 2 full weeks. Sharika?
Usher Qureshi in Gary, Indiana tonight. Thank you.
Now, this place is ideally suited for economic vitalization and for growth. It's about 30 miles from Chicago. It's on Lake Michigan, has some incredible architecture, and a very storied industrial history. But if you're over a certain age, Gary, Indiana was not like that. It was considered to be a Midwestern Mecca. It was right on there on the industrial hub of the railroads that went through Chicago. That was definitely an epicenter, a beating heartbeat of American capitalism. Well, the Democrats, they wound their way in to Chicago and to the suburbs, and they sold Democrats, sadly, a bill of goods. They have scapegoated white people who don't live there, don't have anything to do with the urban blight that has taken over or the crime, and they live outside of it. They have no connection to it whatsoever. And these cities that are run by Democrats, well, the excuses are up. They are not going to be able to get away with this, to use a line from Breaking Bad, because there have been decades that have gone on since the 1960s when you could plausibly argue that there's structural racism. Now, of course, this was in Dixiecrat states run by Democrats for decades. Jim Crow and literacy tests and other types of restrictions on voting, that is something the Democrats mastered. And the United States of America had to fight a bloody civil war, and that was mainly by Northerners, and they fought the Southerners and was able to prevail and do a lot of good for the world, because at that point slavery was commonplace across the world and humanity had accepted it for far too long, and our founders were aware of that, and they put in place the beginning of a process of getting rid of racism in the United States. Like it or not, you cannot go back to the 18th century and pretend like you're a woke progressive that would have known better. Slavery was very much accepted around the globe, and America was an innovator at getting rid of the abominable practice. So the excuses are up. White people are not guilty of those institutions that they had nothing to do with. They are not harming people in these cities. They are not responsible for the mismanagement of those cities. And environmental racism, well, it's just a poor excuse for what is going on. Environmentalism is very much like racism because it's a shibboleth, and it supposedly explains everything, and therefore it explains nothing at all. And so when a storm hits Gary, Indiana, and also Memphis, and it takes weeks to get the power back going, well, it's because the institutions are failing the people. That's because there's a broken mechanism of accountability. The Democrats believe that they're untouchable. It's because they've been given votes by black voters unthinkably for decades. Now, the Trump presidency is an example of blacks starting to realize that the two-party system is broken, and they have started to support more populist policies, but it's still a long work in progress because we're talking about just a handful of votes in his first term, 8%, and then he approximately doubled that in 2024. So it's going to be a long haul, but eventually cases like this, the power being out in Gary, Indiana and Memphis, just will demonstrate to a lot of black voters that something is deeply wrong with their system, and what they should really value isn't race baiting and victim politics and handouts, but competence, management, opportunities, the American dream. They have been blocked from having access to the American dream and the middle-class lifestyle that you earn your way through life through hard work and talent in these cities, because the Democrats are so corrupt. And they are doing it to remain in power. They're not doing it out of benevolence. They're not doing it out of charity. They're not doing it out of other people's best interests at all. It is a con job. And they are fleecing Americans, those who they take the tax money from, and they are harming other Americans with dependency, not just black voters, for example, but there's plenty of white voters who are on this dole from Democrats, and that includes the upper class white liberals who are in our institutions like academia and in the media and the law profession, NGOs that pay themselves six-figure contracts. They're all on the dole too. And there are plenty of white people on welfare. They get caught in the same trap of intergenerational poverty. The war on poverty has failed. And Gary, Indiana is a stark example of that. So weigh in with your thoughts after this story. We always appreciate hearing from you at the Becker Brief.